We used to say that the only game that could kill Overwatch was Overwatch. But I'm here to tell you today that Marvel Rivals is more of a true sequel to Overwatch 1 than Overwatch 2 is, and that goose is cooked. Overwatch 2 was less of a sequel and more of a free-to-play update, where they launched it before fully explaining that they hacked off half of it and are just continuing on as normal like nothing ever happened. I've been watching Marvel Rivals reviews and have seen some players, and a lot of journalists, surprisingly, who are less dedicated fans of the genre and more journeymen who aren't going to stay to play the multiplayer game anyway, so why does their opinion even matter? I don't know. The major knock against Marvel Rivals is that it does feel like an amped up mobile game. You can feel the difference in gameplay and responsiveness, especially in movement, as compared to Overwatch, but that's basically where the benefits of Overwatch stop for me. And I've covered the game full time since 2016. And since my last review video, which was more of the first week of impressions, now I've put 40 hours into the game, reached the top few percentiles in ranked, and learned about a third of the hero roster. In my opinion, on Marvel Rivals has strengthened by a lot. The game got deeper and more interesting the more I learned about it, as I started to discover the depth of the individual hero mechanics, and even more blown away by the viable team comp and matchup diversity. Overwatch players have come to Marvel Rivals and have been dominating the ranked ladder, but we, as a collective of veterans of the hero shooter genre, were very wrong on a long list of heroes, and our perception of their performance potential has flipped as players have dedicated to maximize the unique hero kits, as well as the hero band system for the top 3% players and up, helps knock out some of the S-tier picks, allowing for B and even C-tier picks to both see play, and sometimes even for bottom-tier picks to all of a sudden skyrocket to top-tier picks, especially when you consider some of their best counters being pulled out of the hero lineup. It was a consensus opinion that Wolverine was the worst hero in the game by launch, but now he's seen as one of the most oppressive high-ranked characters, as he can hard dominate tank lines by himself. The world's best Wolverine has been going viral, similar to when we all saw Seagull show us how to play Genji and Hanzo back in 2016. Iron Man, another hero that people were low on, has risen due to the player base committing to master his kit, as well as his powerful team up with Hulk, who also has been developed as a top tier pick in these last weeks. So if you've been playing since launch, a lot of players are like me, realizing just how much more deep and interesting this game is than we originally thought. So if you only put a few amount of hours in and jumped in and were like, well, the hero mechanics aren't as good as Overwatch, so what's the point? Well, the point is you missed the rest of the great bits that come after that. And I think a lot of new players to hero shooters that are coming in probably because of the Marvel IP or finally giving a game like this a chance, maybe avoided Overwatch due to its bad PR for so many years. You may not know why so many dedicated long-term Overwatch players like me are so excited at this new game. The reason is simple. Overwatch came out in 2016, and already by 2018, things started to get out of control with the new hero releases. And at that point, they had what I thought was a clear decision to either lean the game more towards hero bans and decide how they're going to handle the problems of balance and synergies with a strategy that I'll go to explain later. But what they ended up doing is going down the route of role queue and trying to balance the game meticulously to make every single hero competitive with one another. Over time, watering down the game to be more about its base arena shooter fundamentals, which is the result that we get in 5v5, which surprisingly, and a lot of Overwatch fans don't like it when I say this, but is a very balanced game. But that is why it's also very unpopular with many of the players that want more of a hype experience. They find 5v5 Overwatch 2 boring, too focused on its shooter fundamentals, and if they wanted to play that, they could go play Valorant or Apex. Somehow, I found myself devil's advocating for the long list of decisions that Blizzard made towards Overwatch 2. But I never wanted this shit. Why did I get caught holding the bag? I'm the guy who said he wanted hero bans and for the devs not to balance the game back in 2018. What I wanted is what Marvel Rivals has now. It's as if they took my entire playbook, things that both the community and Blizzard basically laughed at the time, and are running it to perfection. No duh, I'm gonna like Marvel Rivals. It's everything I had asked for back then that I had since given up on because I was told it was an impossibility. No game could act this way, basically. It honestly feels like Marvel Rivals is straight out of the multiverse, another version of Overwatch where they kept the hero identities unique, allowed them to be bombastic, unbalanced, but kept the game more fun and somehow more competitive now because there's hero bans in the top 3%. Overwatch has a huge problem because depending on which patch or hero release you joined the game in, depending on which gameplay you liked the best, there's many versions of Overwatch, some with more tanking and cooldowns, overpowered supports, overpowered snipers, overpowered flankers. There's all manner of possibilities, and lots of different sub-communities within Overwatch think they have the right answer of how to balance the game. And if it isn't balanced that way, it's wrong. And if I've learned anything about hero shooter fan bases over these years, it is that they will never agree. Some like Roadhog, some like Reinhardt, some like Divecomp, some like hit scans. These are mutually exclusive ideas, and it's part of the charm and expressiveness and interesting aspects of our game. The diversity of playstyles within the game is the point. So to bias towards one or the other, or to try to balance them all, is kind of a ridiculous concept. Like, how do you balance a sword to a sniper rifle, to a rocket launcher, to a hammer, to a shield? Who's to say? And further, how do you balance it across different skill tiers of play, where skill curve will change the output of heroes drastically? The fact is, you can't. It won't happen. It didn't happen. And even when Overwatch 2 largely did do as best as you could at balancing a hero shooter, people still didn't like it. Casuals and competitive players alike are both clamoring for Marvel Rivals because it has the fun, bombastic gameplay that any player of any multiplayer game can appreciate. And while there's incredibly OP things that will and do dominate the top levels of play, because you can ban them out, it gives opportunities for other heroes to shine, diverse strategies, and it isn't just the top performing heroes that play server admin every game. Why would any of this be a surprise? I don't know, but believe me when I tell you that me making these arguments back in 2018, I got laughed at. The competitive crowd thought I was an idiot for saying that they shouldn't try to balance the game, which is the message they heard, of course. Tuning is one thing, but expecting balanced win rates and performance is ridiculous. And on the other hand, I had personal private beef with the game director Jeff Kaplan, a man who in public was treated like gaming Jesus, both online and in person, due to his charming personality, but he had some serious blind spots in the way he was directing the game. You see, we later found out, after the trials and tribulations of Overwatch's mismanagement, that they really always wanted to still make an RPG game. They first were trying to make a Diablo game with Overwatch 2, failed at that, but ultimately still wanted to make an MMO again. So for years in Overwatch 1, when I didn't like their decisions and mocked them, calling their game a game that I loved, of course, but the way they managed it, it was like they were trying to make Call of Duty for World of Warcraft players, with both how dumb they made the game and how uncompetitive it was, due to how they bent over backwards to make heroes that were, let's face it, kind of easy. Mercy, reworked to be the most powerful hero any game had ever seen, or how they seemingly didn't care that AoE healing and tanking got so strong that you couldn't play damage characters for a good percentage of the game's life. Blizzard RPG devs cared more about the individual hero fantasy, willing allow heroes to be jack of all trades, master of all in Brigitte, but seemingly wanted to be so much different than League of Legends for some reason that they didn't want to learn from the benefits of picks and bans. And this is indicative of how Blizzard made a lot of decisions. They thought they could split the baby. They thought they were so skilled that they could have the best of all worlds without any downsides. So rather than even try hero bans at any point, they went through an asinine hero pools system where they just banned out some of the roster, or in the Overwatch League had a cat randomly pick them. I wish I was making this up. And no manner of competitive experts from esports or commentators and YouTubers like myself could convince them otherwise. It's very obvious the huge chasm of difference of randomly selecting heroes out of the lineup versus you yourself picking bans based on your own skill set as well as the skill set of your teammates. And going down the road of hyperfixating on balance really watered down the hero identity and led to a harsher rock, paper, scissors gameplay, which just simply isn't as interesting as what we have in Marvel Rivals. Not even close. Okay, there might be some of you that aren't on board with these arguments. And you don't have to like Marvel Rivals, that's fine. But lots of people do. But let me show you why what seems like a very controversial take when I say don't balance the game is the only way to make these types of games stay fun and work. What do you mean don't balance the game, Frito? Overwatch 1 failed because poor and inadequate balancing. That's what I was told. I read it in my favorite gaming journalist website, Kotaku. Here's a quick play game where I'm trying to learn a melee hero named Magic. I'm trying to combo their Winter Soldier, who's basically Cassidy of this game. He's anti-dive. So I'm giving him precisely the matchup he wants, and I'm getting absolutely rolled over and over. Even when I try to flank past him to get to his supports, he still finds me. I get fed up and say, okay, it's time to freely swap to the best DPS in the game, Hela. I don't really play hit scan like that, but Hela's headshot damage is insane. She outclasses just about every medium range backliner character, not even close to balanced, because on top of that, her ult is also insane. She has mobility to escape and reposition, and a stun nade. She is the perfect DPS character, and so many playstyles are automatically null and void with a Hela on the field, able to two-tap your squishies and work down your tanks even. Hela is the god queen of the Marvel Rivals universe, but there's a chance that a big percentage of the player base won't even find her oppressive because she does require headshots to really get going. And in this game, there's a lot of easy melee flanker kills that are going on, so who's to say that she's going to be more oppressive to your average player than the Iron Fists of the world, who has a durability cooldown and an auto-target melee. That being said, if there wasn't bans, competitive Marvel Rivals would be a joke. It would be terrible, because a few heroes dominate the rest. But thanks to the fact that there is bans, the hero identities are allowed to remain intact, and we're not expecting some intricate numbers game where Punisher's range damage has to change by 5 meters every other patch, and we've got to change Winter Soldier's cooldowns just a little bit so that he can compete up against Hela, and all of them have to somehow be balanced in some perfect harmony, otherwise the player base is going to revolt. That's all nonsense, guys. And if you don't think it's nonsense, why isn't Overwatch 2 deemed the best game in the universe right now? That is their strategy, not my strategy. I didn't want that shit. We had other content creators that told them it's just okay, just everything's fine, just do more changes. Just run in a circle and chase a parked car more, just like Fortnite does. Reinvent yourself, change. That's the way to make Overwatch more competitive. And I said nonsense. I'm feeling pretty damn right on everything I had said and the advice I gave for this game so many years ago. Because the problem with expecting balance to solve issues is exactly what Overwatch has dealt with since 2016. Heroes like Widowmaker and Tracer have insane viability based on their skill expression, which isn't a balanceable concept. The irony of this is Jeff Kaplan was against hero bans because he thought it took away player agency. Because if you can ban the character someone wants to play, how is that adding agency to the game? Well, the answer is obvious. Competitive agency is very different than casual agency. You play in a casual format, just play your favorite character, everything's fine. In a competitive format, especially when you get up to higher tiers, the better hero dominates the weaker heroes, and you have no agency to compete. So you have the agency to lose and get destroyed horribly if you want, but who would do that in a competitive game? It's common sense. Yet on top of that, they specifically designed a character like Brigitte, who in her launch state hard countered Tracer anyway. So I don't know where he even got this agency idea from to begin with, because it was their expressed goal in releasing Brigitte, as he said, to change the meta, which had been dive up to that point. Genji, Tracer, Winston, Diva were dominating any backliner style character, and the support gameplay was based on how long you could try to live. That was your major contribution at the time. Well, then they came out with the hero that auto beat Tracer. It's kind of ridiculous, guys, because they talked on both ends of their mouth with this. It just didn't have the perspective rooted in reality that was required to fix it fast enough. Then before you know it, the years are passing on and we're going down this bad strategy that just gives milquetoast results year after year. And then Marvel Rivals comes out with a completely different philosophy and it blows the gaming community away. As a competitive player myself, do I think a handful of things are overtuned? Yes, of course. But they don't really affect my game in the same way because game to game, there's different bans oftentimes. While the top S-tier picks are banned more often, it's diverse enough that I see a rotating cast of characters, which is all I ever wanted from these types of games. I like to see lots of heroes get viability because I don't just want to see the top S-tier picks in a mirror match every single game until the next patch comes in. Very simple. And most players tend to want that result, even if they say they do or don't want hero bans. Some just hold the delusion that balance in the free swap format can create that. All right, so hero bans not only saves, but expands this game. It does every positive thing I ever said it would do, and let me explain how it works. The system starts by you simply telling your team what hero you want to play. This has an added benefit of working sort of like a preferred role system, which is also a big part of its genius. You don't waste the assemble your heroes phase of the startup staring at a wall. You're actually indicating what your preferred playstyle is. And while not perfect, top-level players will know, well, maybe we shouldn't ban Hela if we have a Hela player, or, hey, we have a Hulk who's a dive character. Maybe I should tell him that I play Iron Man as well, who have a team-up and a good playstyle synergy. That stuff happens all the time, just by that one added phase at the start. Then from there, both teams blind ban one hero at a time. Sometimes the same hero gets banned. Often it might be Luna Snow or Hela, then the next up probably is Hawkeye, but there's other S tier or even niche picks that are in consideration. Maybe your support players just don't want to have to duel a Psylocke. So game to game, there'll be a mix of 2 to 4 bans. But the beautiful thing about this is when those top tier contenders get taken out of the lineup, especially the top supports, frankly, lots of other supports get played. And with the snipers taken out, who would otherwise dominate the DPS category, lots of other DPS get played. It's exactly the thing I said. The beauty of it is when you take out S tier picks, the next several tiers down are either more competitively balanced in terms of their numbers, or take unique skill expression that who knows in any given match, if your teammate is an expert at Black Panther or Magic or Iron Fist or whoever. Each individual hero is so specialized anyway, it's not like our community is an AI algorithm and we can be perfectly the same level on every single hero always. That's not how it works, right? People usually master the best heroes or are the best themselves at a subset, and then somebody might have to flex around a little bit to optimize the team comp, and before you know it, you've got gameplay diversity game to game. Surprisingly, sometimes you'll get a teammate who just hates one particular hero, or perhaps they admit that they're a one-trick and asks you to ban specifically the thing that counters them, even if it isn't a top meta option. And usually the team complies because we all want to win. Imagine if we had that, rather than the route that Blizzard eventually did go to try to make Symmetra and Torbjorn and Bastion as competitively viable as Genji, Tracer, Widowmaker, Cassidy. It was a bad idea then, it didn't work, it just annoyed everybody, and it didn't help gameplay. See, because here's the thing, it isn't the reworks or the rebalancing or the numbers tuning that mattered, it's a system like this would have saved Overwatch from itself, because it's already saved and expanded Marvel Rivals. Now, it was a little harder at the time to know that Overwatch 1 could have survived without roll queue, because the reality was those maps and modes were designed for you to get through tight chokes holding the hands of your teammates in order to survive, which sort of felt like trying to get your kindergarten kids to line up in a row. That was just not fun, and thankfully the map design and game modes of Overwatch 2 are better, but it seems to be the consensus that in Marvel Rivals, we do not want to roll queue at all. Not just because of the failures of it and the downsides of queue times, etc. in Overwatch. Already in Marvel Rivals, thanks to the ban system, there's many ways to build team comps anyway. Multi-DPS, multi-support. The only thing that doesn't look too good is multi-tank, because if you play against a good Wolverine, I highly suggest you play less tanks, because he's weaker against most duelists, and with his insane crowd control and percentage-based damage, he just farms up tanks, either by isolating them back into your team or just by face rolling them by walking into them. But in general, 2 tanks are an easier comp to play, but don't be surprised if that Psylocke flank or pressure from Iron Man from miles away pulls even those comps apart as well. Now, I've been trying to assess just how high I am on this game and if it's reasonable and lasting. So it being a new game certainly matters, but in my opinion, so much of it is already imported in from Overwatch 1 that it doesn't feel entirely new. It isn't just novelty that's driving us crazy. Yes, part of the meta develops as more heroes become mastered, and with 33 heroes in a new game all at once, there's a lot to learn. But also, it's the depth of the plays any given hero can make and how nuanced a lot of that is. Granted, Overwatch heroes have gotten more complicated over time, but it's nothing compared to the Marvel Rivals characters, who in comparison kind of feel like they have double the amount of abilities in any given kit. Not necessarily more buttons, but more options and more depth to how their character's going to interact. A lot of complexity is in these heroes, giving you a lot of opportunity to both master them, but also consider the many, many layers to any engagement. If Overwatch 2 kind of simply boils down to hit your shots, Marvel Rivals is the exact opposite of that, as it almost looks like an MMO PvP type game more so than a shooter. So when we talk about agency in video games, do I have the agency to force my team to play around a suboptimal hero? Yeah, I could be a jerk, and that's how Overwatch 1 was. But wouldn't it be better if we lived in a world where, thanks to the diminished power of the overall roster, more lower tier picks were more viable? Because I see Hulk get banned a lot in games as well. Because if you don't want to go up against the Iron Man Hulk combo, well, then the tank power goes down a bit. And while Doctor Strange is the best tank in the game, Captain America isn't too bad against him. It isn't like you auto-lose the matchup just by selecting him. Melee heroes have a natural advantage over the poke tanks, as they're often more mobile and will rack up more damage at close range. Isn't that interesting? Isn't what I just said? Like, imagine we had that in Overwatch. Think of any meta that was oppressive, and we could say you can go game to game, where the players may want to lean into the meta or the counter meta, and you and your own match-made team of randoms can decide for yourself. Some games will perform badly. I've seen Hela go unbanned and then unchecked by the enemy team, as we all scramble to figure out how to play against this oppressive sniper we forgot to ban. But oh well, that's one game, as opposed to every game being that, which is what a lot of top 500 players feel about Widowmaker in Overwatch 2. And this scratches the surface, guys. I could talk about Rocket Raccoon, who I think is a load of fun. Iron Man, I'm getting into. I like lots and lots of heroes, and the more I play, the more I want to play. The thing I'm loving about Marvel Rivals so much that makes it so much better than Overwatch right now is the layers of depth in a given hero, but also the possibilities for the matchup variety, which you simply don't get in Overwatch. They went an entirely stupid route to try to achieve it and don't come close. I like Overwatch for its gunplay and feel, and that's about it. I'm at the point now where I don't want to go back to play Overwatch until they add hero bans. It's obvious how good it is. At it. Why did we have to think 100 years about the ramifications of this? Marvel Rivals launched like this in a worse balanced position, probably, but the game is simply more fun the less balanced it is, thanks to bans. Because you don't have to rob the power of one hero to benefit another. You don't have to raise the skill floor for the entire player base just because a few top percentage players dominate on a given character. Overwatch, with its MMORPG developers, developed a culture of babying the one tricks of our community, bending over backwards to give them what they wanted to try to make every playstyle as equally viable as they can, which turned Overwatch into a Fisher-Price My First esport, instead of being realistic like adults, knowing that not only can you not make everything equally balanced, you wouldn't want it if you could, because no amount of good or bad balancing has ever created the amount of diversity that I see in Marvel Rivals already. NetEase is doing the opposite of the things Blizzard did, and I couldn't be happier about it. They're not interested in role queue. They're not going to meticulously balance the game, destroying hero identity in the process. And don't get me wrong, there's things I think should be tuned, but it kind of doesn't matter if they do or don't. Like, if you're not a sniper player, a lot of what your carry impact might be can be completely undone by the Luna Snow ultimate that can last an entire Lollapalooza concert. But so what? Because I tell you this for free, even if they do nerf that, do you think the big team reses that are in the game aren't going to creep up as being powerful? Because they're already pretty good. There's lots of ways to contribute. And what we learned from Overwatch is you will just endlessly play whack-a-mole, taking one obnoxious thing and moving it to the next. If you nerf the snipers in this game, do you not think Punisher is going to look a little over the top? Everything's over the top. That's the point of the game. And I wish that's something that Overwatch players and our community members and our streamers who want to try to criticize Blizzard for making Kiriko too OP, and then before you know it, she's nerfed down to the point where she's not really a competitive option anymore. Now we're worried that Juno's OP, and before you know it, over time, she'll be nerfed down where she's not an option anymore, until the next hero comes out who's a support that's OP. And how have we not learned? How have we not learned this is a cycle that will never end? Listen, if that's the game you want in Overwatch, enjoy. We know the results, what that ends up with. If that's how they want to develop the game, I'm out, dog. Marvel's doing the things I had begged and pleaded for the devs to do for years and years, so much so that I gave up on. Overwatch 2 was already in a hole, and now I feel Marvel Rivals came and just put dirt on it and buried them. You don't see Marvel Rivals out here trying to bend over backwards to appease the Wolverine community or the Storm community to make sure they have a equal win rate to the Psylocks and Hellas of the world. Like, imagine how ridiculous that would be. We would never do that in a competitive shooter game, would we? No, of course not. Guys, that's everything for today's video. I hope you have a fun and safe New Year's. You can expect a lot more Marvel Rivals content coming to this channel in 2025, and I do hope Blizzard gets its act together, but I owe nothing to this game. I've put my heart and soul into Overwatch since its release. We used to have a large, expanded team who got burnt out and left due to the mismanagement of exactly the things I'm talking about in this video. I'm excited to see how this develops. Will Blizzard respond to Marvel Rivals in a big way? I feel like they're just so far behind at this point, and how do they make the next series of 10 odd decisions to revert so many things back? It's just not going to happen, right? Blizzard designs by committee. I just don't see them getting their ducks in a row to being able to compete with the fun factor and strategic depth that Marvel Rivals provides. So I think it's cooked, man. I think it's done. GG's. It was a good run. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it a like, and don't forget to hit subscribe and the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come out. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.